Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our amazing open session today. We're just a few more minutes as I go live on Facebook. I guess my internet is going slow. Okay. Yeah, my internet is a bit slow. Okay, I'm pressing Instagram. Welcome, everybody. Hello, Instagram. Hello, Facebook. Welcome. I would like to welcome you today for the open live session on the pyramid of consciousness. Today, we're going to do something quite amazing. We're going to go into the archetypes, okay? So something amazing, something fascinating. I will actually show you and draw the archetypes. My internet is very slow. I hope everything is going fine. Okay, welcome. Okay, today we're going to go through the 12 archetypes. We're actually going to discuss the layer of the pyramid of consciousness that deals with archetypes. And further down, I'm actually going to I'm going to discuss with you the 12 archetypes, which will give you more understanding, more kind of more depthness, more understanding into, what the archetypes are and how they relate to this layer of the archetypes that we usually refer to, okay? Here you go. We are discussing now the step 4.2 or the third level, which is broken down into two parts. The third level, which is the collective unconsciousness, right? Some people can refer to this collective subconsciousness or collective unconsciousness. Well, it's broken down into two parts. One is the egregores, which we discussed last week. And today we're discussing the myth and the archetypes. They're quite connected together because the archetypes are based on the myth, right? The archetypes, for example, the archetypes I'm going to bring you today are the archetypes based on the Jungian explanation of the archetypes. We can also over here, we can refer to those of you who ever drew the hero's journey. I actually have a hero's journey that I drew in September in the open session format on my YouTube channel. You can go and you can introduce yourself to the wonderful hero's journey. Hero's journey is based upon Joseph Campbell's book, The Face of a Thousand Heroes, where he went through myth and legends, right? Which is why we're talking about it now, right? Because this specific layer within the pyramid of consciousness has to do with myth and legends and archetypes, right? So within myth and legend, what Joseph Campbell did, he went through, he did a thorough research and he came up with a certain pathway. It's called the hero's journey, that any character, any hero, right, goes through in order to get from the beginning till the end. Okay, something similar is happening with the archetypes, right? I'm actually going to show it to you today. I'm going to change my camera so you will be able to see the circle broken into 12 parts. Okay, right here. And we will be drawing. I'm going to show you, I'm going to illustrate to you the 12 archetypes within this format. But again, it's going to be very quick. We're not doing the actual journeys, the hero's journey, which, by the way, you can. If you want to take everything that I'm going to show you today and actually adapt it into a Neurographic drawing of the hero's journey, you're welcome to do that. It's a wonderful, wonderful drawing that you can actually do. Okay. What else? Let's start talking about the archetypes, the idea of the archetypes. What are the archetypes? Archetypes are, this general ideas, a general understanding of how we see certain figures within our life, okay? The archetypes can be any general ideas, such as the archetype of a mother, right? Most of the people will share the same archetype, that the mother is this woman who takes care of her children, okay? Is a female. For most people, an archetype of a mother, it's a female who takes care of her children. I don't know what's happening with my Facebook. It is, it's very slow. Okay. Nowadays, right, with various gender with that various differences in the way people view gender roles and everything, right? Nowadays, a mother, some people can see a mother as a male taking care of their children, right? But still, majority of the collectively unconsciously speaking, right, most of the people will see the mother figure as a female taking care of the children, okay? And that's an archetype, okay? An archetype is also, you know, anything, right? Take an idea of a child. What would be an archetype for you? Or an angel. If you say an angel, most of the people will see the archetype of an angel as such as it's depicted within the, you know, artistic world, you know, within the sculptures that we used to see, or the picture that we used to see. As angels are this, you know, cherubs, this little children who are a bit, you know, maybe most of the time those children are, you know, maybe even a bit, you know, like chubby, right? And they have wings in their back, okay? And they have curls on their hair. That's an archetype, okay? Most of the people share archetypes. So archetypes vary, they're similar to egregors, okay? Archetypes vary in the culture, archetypes vary throughout the communities, right? Archetypes vary depending on, you know, the people who are watching, the people who are interested, right? If you ask females, they can see certain archetypes in certain way, you know, gender-wise also males would see certain archetypes in different ways, right? If you think about a business person, right? The females, we see a business person in certain archetypes. It's most of the time, it might have been, if you would ask about 30, 40 years ago, the archetype of a business person would be most probably a male. Nowadays, that archetype changes, right? A lot of times, women, especially if they had that model in their lifetime, you know, when they grew up, they would see an archetype as a female, let's say archetype of a business person, as a female who's opening up her own business, or the female who works in the corporations, right, wearing maybe a suit, right? We all have our associations with various archetypes, with various ideas of how and why things happen a certain way, okay? I want to bring you today an understanding of the archetypes that is based upon the Jungian teachings of the archetypes, and specifically taking it from this book by Carol Pearson. I'm going to change my camera now. For those of you on Facebook and for those of you on Instagram, I'm going to change my camera so you will be able to see what I would like to show you and what I'm going to illustrate to you regarding the archetypes. Okay, give me a second. Okay, I put away my. So this is the book that is the archetypes that I'm giving you today are based upon this book by Carol Pearson. She's one of the most researching. She's the person who researched one of the most utmost authors on the archetypes. I definitely would recommend, if you are interested in learning more about the following 12 archetypes that you see here in the bottom, definitely I suggest an amazing book which studies each archetype completely and separately and deeply. So based on this book, I'm going to tell you the 12 archetypes. I'm going to bring you the 12 archetypes. 1 second, I realized those of you on Instagram didn't get to see the book. This is the book. 1 second. Okay. This is the book, Awakening the Hero Within by Carol Pearson. An amazing book. You can find it on Amazon. That's where I bought my copy. Just give me a second. Let me make sure that I do see the Facebook, just in case people post some questions or comments. And I'm going to start telling you about the archetypes, okay? Again, going very quickly, okay? Not going deeply at all. We'll try to give you as much information as possible. Okay, the archetypes are broken, again, based on Carol Pearson's book, which is one of the most famous, renowned authors on the archetypes, okay? The archetypes, there are 12 archetypes. They're broken into 3 parts, okay? So part number 1 will be this, okay? And this will be the archetypes that we deal with that have to do with our ego. By the way, those of you who ever learned tarot cards, they're also based upon the Jungian archetypes, okay? The way the tarot cards are taught now, you know, there is a whole movement about using tarot cards in psychology. It's something actually I'm planning to study, I guess, in a year or 2. It's in my plans. I actually realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Lana Shalom. I'm a certified Neurographic instructor. I'm a certified psychology of money trainer. So today my session is open session today. It has to do with Neurographica study. We are going deep within the pyramid of consciousness, an amazing structure created by Pavel Piskaryov, PhD. Dr. Pavel Piskaryov is the creator of the Neurographic Method. He is the founder of the Institute for Psychology of Creativity, and actually an array of many other amazing tools, which I am planning to bring to you this for the next few months, okay? So yeah, a beautiful pyramid of consciousness, which took the idea that Jung gave us, the basic structure of consciousness, and developed much further, much more details. And again, the part over here that have to do with the collective unconsciousness, we're dealing with archetypes specifically, okay? So if we talk about archetypes, okay, archetypes are the way archetypes can also be done, like I said, as part of the hero's journey. And maybe once I finish studying my book, we might do one of the open sessions, right? The second part of the archetypes will be, so first, the way the person develops is we are developing our ego, okay? Ego is the development of anything that has to do with the physical formation of a human being, right? And we know this is how it forms, right? The child grows up, right? And the physical body is growing. And as the physical body is growing, we're growing something that Freud called ego, right? Something that has to do with the way we see the world, right? It's interesting, again, having to do with the pyramid of consciousness. This has to do with the first 2 layers that we discussed about 2 weeks ago, right? Where we discussed the active consciousness and the operational consciousness, right? And that's the development of ego, right? Everything around about our body, our attention, consciousness, the way we see the world, the way we develop in the world, the way we start understanding the world also, right? The way we start reacting to the world, I would also say, right? Okay, the way we start reacting, the way we start understanding. I think the reacting, right? Understanding and the reacting to the world is one of the most important ways, the way we see our ego developing, you know, the way we understand how certain things, how certain people, or how certain entities develop in the world. And the way we start understanding is maybe this is how we should be behaving, or this is how we should be treating the world or seeing the world, okay? I'm going to tell you the 4 archetypes soon. The next session, the next part of the development within the human being is something we call the soul, okay? And the last part of the development of the human being is something we call self, okay? Self is a term coined by Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, the famous psychologist, the disciple of Freud. We have self right here in the pyramid of consciousness, right? So it's interesting, if you look at the pyramid of consciousness, it's also broken into 3 parts. You can see it by the division with gold, right? The first part is ego, right? Body development. The second part is soul. where we figure out that it has to do with something that we call consciousness, emotions, right? Individual consciousness or subconsciousness or unconscious, and collective consciousness and subconscious and unconscious, right? And then we go into something that we call the self, absolute joy, drive, right? Pavel calls it the drive, right? Absolute drive, he calls it, right? I call it happiness. I actually refer to this part as the soul, but within the framework of our work today, we're going to refer to this as self or drive, okay? Exactly as it says here in the pyramid of consciousness. So let's start understanding, how does the ego develop, okay? What is the journey that the ego needs to go through in order to develop fully, right? It's interesting to start noting that Carol, again, this work is fully based upon the Jungian understanding and the Jungian explanation of how the archetypes work. The very first archetype is called, I'm going to take a different marker because this one doesn't work so well here. Okay, this one is called, where is it? Okay, yeah, I'm going to use a red one for here. I got new markers, so I'm eager to use them. This one is called the innocent. Okay. The innocence goal, the innocent is actually, it's so interesting to start understanding that the human being develops as a young newborn child, right? The innocent actually refers to this, to this part of the child of the human development we refer to as a childhood, right? What is a childhood like? It's innocent, right? Children are innocent. They see everything as exciting. They see everything as something new, something that should be discovered, something that they're interested in practicing, something they're interested in figuring out, right? They would take toys and they would take blocks and start building with them. Magnetos, right? This amazing new invention, they would start building and creating something new. Creativity, interest, optimism, right? If we're talking about psychological ways, the main gifts or virtues of this stage of this archetype is optimism, trust, hope, faith, okay? Now, remember, each archetype, there's something that Freud wrote, that each archetype has a part to it that's called the shadow, okay? The shadow is the darker side of each archetype, okay? The shadow of the innocent would be denial that something bad may exist, denial that something may go on, right? That will, my computer is stuck. Something is happening with my internet. Okay. Give me a second. The shadow of the innocent is denial. Okay, denial. This happened. The shadow means that somebody did not fully complete this developmental stage, did not fully go through this archetype, understand and receive the gifts. And also there is something we call the dragon. The dragon is the problem that is set within this developmental stage, within this archetype. And the dragon is the way we deal with the problem, right? So the way we deal with a problem during the innocent is denial. Nothing exists, right? There is no problem. If there is a problem, then a mother or a father will come and will figure it out for us, okay? Now, the second part of the ego development is called the orphan. Actually, I'm going to turn it like this, the orphan. Okay, it's interesting to start understanding that the orphan is the next developmental stage. The orphan is when they, if you think about it, within the development stage of this, maybe preteen or like teen area, when children start looking around and understanding that, you know, the world is not exactly black and white, the world is not exactly all good, right, all positive or amazing, the way I usually would say. So the virtue of this archetype is children start learning to become more independent, right? They start looking around, they start doing stuff like learning how to eat by their own themselves, right? Potty training, later on going to school, right? Being away from their parents for a longer period of time, learning to interact with others, right? So interdependence, right? Realism, right? That's the orphan. The orphan starts looking around and understanding that the mother and the father are not the most important people in the universe. Start understanding that there are other people, other adults most of the time, who are important. They can be teachers, right? Most of the time it's teachers. It can be, yeah, I would say most of the time these adults are teachers. Sometimes it may refer to maybe family members such as uncles, aunts, you know, maybe if the children are babysit by older sibling, they start seeing their older sibling as authority figures. Basically, there is a change, a shift in the authority figures. And that's why it's called the orphan. It's interesting choice of name, because the children start realizing that they're not fully, they cannot be always protected or always be there with their parents. Okay. And at one point, it may make them feel like an orphan, like they don't have that support, that big authority support figure behind them all the time. Like sometimes when something happens in school, right, when something unfair, that they view something as an unfair situation, teacher did something that they felt stressful or traumatized by, and the parents are not there to help them, right? They may have this feeling that that's the stage they go to. So the gifts are the independence, realism, right? Resilience, right? Learning to become resilient, right? The way the shadow form, right, is becoming a victim, the shadow form, and the way the person would deal with the problem in the beginning, it would be feeling as a victim, right? But it's interesting, and that's an interesting part about this development, is that the challenges of this archetype, of this development, is that finding this resilience, finding the strength to start dealing with the realism around you by learning to use your independence as a way to find resources within yourself to deal with the fact that somebody is trying to make you a victim, or somebody is bothering you, or somebody is attacking you, or whatever the charge, or the challenge, this developmental stage is experienced by a person. Okay, so again, start interesting. It's extremely interesting. I'm giving you a very, very quick and not so thorough, not so deep explanation, just because we really have like what, another 15-20 minutes. I should go even faster. The next stage we have here, something's happening with my computer. It's extremely slow. Give me a second. Okay. The next stage is, second. Let's see if I close this, it would be faster. Okay. Very slow today. Okay. The next stage is called the warrior. Okay. And the idea here is that, remember how we, at first we become like somewhat orphan, right? We start looking and seeing that there's some harsh reality, okay? Harsh reality around us. Things are not always fair. We don't always get our way, right? And remember we talked about resilience. Same thing here. The warrior is the next developmental stage. And the presence we get during this stage is courage, discipline, okay, determination, skill, okay. And it's a shadow part, right? What happens if the person does not go through the stage fully? I would say the warrior would correspond to maybe teenage years, right? When the child starts developing, when a person starts developing resilience. The shadow, the dragon, excuse me, is confronting it. Okay, the shadow form would be people who are constantly, people like that who are adults, and they're constantly fighting, right? They're constantly fighting for what's right, what's in their sense. In their sense, the world is always unfair. Okay. And they're constantly fighting. They're in the fighting mode all the time, right? It's I call it, the Don Quixote style, where he's looking for the mills, right, to fight. There is no danger, but even the mills represent danger, right? I know people like that. They're constantly fighting. They're constantly seeing injustice everywhere. And it's interesting to note, these people are like revolutionary. People like this who start bringing revolutionary ideas to the world, revolutionary, explanations, the way people see the world, and start saying, this is not fair or this is not right. And they will, start working with that. Some people will ignore it, right? The innocents will ignore something unfair, say, somebody else will take care. The orphan will feel victimized, say, oh no, I hope they don't bother me. But the warrior will tackle it upon, right? Will take out their sword and say, you know what? I'm going to fight this dragon. Okay. The way they deal with the problem is they confront it. Okay. Confrontation, constant confrontation is a shadow. But regular dealing, if you have a problem, you just confront it, okay? That's the right way to deal, right? You deal with it. You don't ignore it, or you're not feared by it. The next step is something we call the, excuse me, the caregiver, okay? The caregiver is somebody who develops as a result, after the warrior has learned how to deal with the issue, right? What does the caregiver do? The caregiver starts developing empathy, right? Starts developing caregiving, compassion, right? Generosity, right? What would be the shadow if this archetype, if this developmental stage did not go through appropriately or did not complete? The shadow form would be manipulator, right? Somebody who we call as a manipulator, somebody as we call sacrifice, the suffering martyr, right? The sufferer, right? We also call it. Most of my clients, as a professional within the psychology, within the coaching world, most of my clients, this would be this over controlling parental figure, right? Which constantly controls, like this over controlling mother who constantly says, look how much I sacrificed. Do you know, all those shows, where they have those parents, and the parents always say, do you understand the amount of hours I went through to give birth to you, right? It's something like this, where suffering is a price the person is looking to give, okay? That's a caregiver. But if the person goes through the stages correctly, this is where the person develops empathy, compassion, generosity. By the way we deal with the dragon, with the problem, is taking care, okay? You learn how to take care. Okay, that's very important, right? And it's interesting to start noting that if we look at it gender-wise, or if we look at it energy-wise, right, the warrior is developing your masculine side, while the caregiver is developing your feminine side, right? Again, I'm not saying this only applies to women or men, right? No gender separation like that. We all need to develop our warrior inside, our masculine, the way we learn to confront a dragon, a problem. And the way we learn to take comfort, compassion toward the dragon, toward the problem, start understanding why is this happening and how we can help it. Can we help it in a different way, right? The next step within the next step, we're going into the soul part. So within the soul, we have the next step is the seeker. And start noticing, I should change my, okay. The seeker is the next stage within the development where we start taking care of the development of our soul, okay? Within the realistic world, we call it the development of our mind, right? This is a stage developmentally wise, right? The caregiver is maybe until maybe the last teen years, right? Until like the age of 19, 20. And then we start developing our soul. We know usually people at this age develop their mental capabilities. They're in college and universities, getting their bachelor's degrees, their PhDs and, masters and all that stuff. So the seeker is searching. The goal for the seeker is search for better life, okay? Searching. And the virtues, the presence you receive here would be, searching, right? Autonomy, right? Most of the time, this is the separation developmental stage. This is when children start, not children anymore, young adults start moving out of their houses, right? They don't live with their parents anymore. They either rent and work, or they go to colleges, right? And also sometimes work, right? Developing their own identity, right? Identity formation, right? Ambition, right? They become ambitious. They start thinking, I want to become a psychologist. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a business person. I want to become a creator, right? And they start exploring, right? Various possibilities, exploring various possibilities. The shadow form for this developmental stage, something that we have to be careful not to get sucked into, is something we call the perfectionist, right? I'm sure this is something some of you can relate to, right? Perfectionism, the way they deal at this stage, the way that people deal with dragons or problems is kind of fleeing from it. You're like, I'm not ready to deal with you yet. Let me get some resources. I'll come back to you. Fleeing the problems, okay? Problems, okay? Okay, and that's what college students do, right? They want to focus on their studies. They're not interested in, I don't know, commitment, marriage, or like getting a permanent job or something, right? They're interested in exploring, working in different areas, trying different areas, getting to know different people, right? The next step is called the loving, okay? This is the stage where we start developing, even though this starts developing earlier, right, during teenage years, right, when children start understanding that, there's something called the opposite sex, and I'm having some kind of interesting emotional reactions to them. The loving part is when you start developing a more balanced approach to understanding, right? Right? And I'm going to show you what the virtues are. The passion, right? Maybe learn how to have a commitment already, right? And this can refer also to career, right? You start making commitment, you start understanding that you definitely want to become a doctor and you're applying to medical school, or you're saying, you know what, I think I want to do something else. I want to become a biology teacher or something similar, right? So there's passion, there's commitment, there's enthusiasm, right? And there's something we call pleasure, right? Looking for pleasure, right? Relationships, right? Right? It used to be that during this age, now in our generation, now in the previous generation has shifted a bit because of this new development, when the women went to work and they start exploring different possibilities, they kind of get, sometimes people get stuck in the seeker, but a lot of times still people get married around this area, right? They graduate, they get a job, they're more stable, they're more balanced. And people start exploring the idea of a commitment, whether it's marriage or just whether it's, being committed in a committed relationship. And it's interesting. The shadow here would be what? Obsessiveness with love or sex, right? So it would be seducers, right? Something called like a female style of seducer, something called sirens, right? Right. Addicts, right? Various relationship or sex addicts, right? Okay, that would be the way, the shadow part. The way to deal with a dragon, with the problem, would be to love it. Fall in love with the dragon, right? There are so many funny stories I just recently read about, the new contemporary views of the way the dragon and the princess stories are viewed, where the princess falls in love with the dragon, right? She starts seeing the dragon thinking, oh, maybe I'm in love. So the way to deal with the problem is, seeing everything as a pink glasses, so to say, The next step would be, but again, if a person, let's say, we all go through the stages, by the way, okay? The stage of development, it can be any project can go through the stages of development, or a person goes through the stages of development within their lifetime, okay? The next step would be something called the destroyer, okay? Look what happens, half the way is gone. And the person looks around and starts saying, I'm looking for, this is where a person is seeking metamorphosis, okay? Change. Person is seeking change, okay? A person is seeking, this is one of those complicated archetypes. I'm not gonna try to tell you now. Maybe I'll make, like I said, a separate series of sessions on the archetypes, and I will deal with this in deeper. But this is where the virtue, the gift here is humility. This is when people start changing jobs, start changing their realities, moving, right? Revolution, right? People start looking around saying, I'm not happy with the fact that female workers get paid less than male workers. Revolution, metamorphosis, we need some change. Okay, this also has, the gift is capacity to let go. Sometimes you let go of something and you say, I'm going to try to do change, but I will start the changing with myself. I will just find a new job where I will be paid better, where I would be more appreciated. Okay. Capacity to let go. This is one of those hardest virtue, right? The shadow part is self-destructive behavior, addictions, compulsions, okay? Addicts, compulsions, okay? And the way this archetype deals with the dragon is allowing the dragon to slay it, okay? You just kind of, you destroy, you're not sure you can slay the dragon, so you kind of succumb to the dragon, okay? Once the person goes through the stage and receives humility, the capacity to let go, and the capacity to change, this metamorphosis, the person can get to the next stage, which is the creator. The person finds new resources within to create something new, to start bringing a different idea or different views, different changes to the world around them. They create something out of the pain of the destroyer, right? When they're not happy, where they find that things are not happening the way they see. Also some kind of a revolutionary part, right, over here. Has to do with the warrior. Look, step number 3 is always like somebody who's looking to change, right? Interesting. Comes the creator. You create something. You say, you know what? I'm going to create a solution to this problem. I'm going to create a new product. I'm going to create a new business. I'm going to create a new movement, right? That will create a new change throughout the whole, throughout the whole world, throughout the whole part of the world, okay? And the creator's virtues are creativity, vision, individuality, imagination, okay? This is an amazing way. This is the way most people created something amazing, right? Walt Disney, I don't know, internet is kind of a hard example because in internet, the development actually occurs much earlier, but most of the time, new products, new ideas were created over here, okay? We have to be careful. The shadow side of this is obsession with creating, okay? When a person starts creating but does not complete what they start, okay? Obsession with starting something new, creating, but not completing it, okay? So that's something that's a shadow form. The way this archetype deals with the dragon is claiming it as part of the self, right? They say, this dragon, I'm actually accepting it, that it's a part of who I am on my side, right? So kind of internalizing also, right? That we have a part of us that's called the dragon, that there is a problem. In order to find a solution, you need to have a problem. Okay, and then we get to the next stage. This is when a person start understanding that there is something called the self. There is this, idealistic vision, idealistic world that we see. And we're looking forward to going forward within this. We're looking forward to improving the world, making it more or less idealistic, okay? Trying at least to make it as ideal as possible, okay? The archetype here is the ruler, okay? Right, if over here we create something, over here we'll become the CEO, we become the founder of something, right? It's called the ruler, okay? The ruler. The ruler archetypes is where we start taking responsibility and saying, you know what, I created something new. I'm going to make sure I complete it. And I want to seek through it. I want to make sure it brings change to the world, right? So it's the goal of the ruler is to find order, right? To complete order, to bring order to the world. And the virtues, the gifts we bring here is responsibility, right? Control. System, right? Okay, interesting to start noting this, right? Those of you who are familiar with the 5 elements of the Wu Xing, this would refer, this area would refer to the element of metal, right? Where you are structured, you are aware, you understand things, you know how things work, and you are learning how to bring the system, the understanding of the system into the world, into reality. The shadow here, if a person does not fully complete this developmental stage, the shadow here would be becoming a tyrant, right? Right, like Napoleon, right? First he brought freedom to France, but then he wanted to become a tyrant. He was obsessed with bringing freedom and this new system he invented to the whole world, even if, people of that country or governments of this country are not agreeing with that, okay? Tyrant, controller, right? Controlling at any price would be the word, okay? Controlling at any price, okay? 3 more we have. Yeah, we need to hurry up. We have a basic session starting after this. The next stage would be the magician, okay? Magician is when a person initiates and completes this, or starts bringing this new idea, this new product, new development, new movement to the world. And then the person starts saying, what's next? I brought this amazing idea. what's going to happen next? Is there a different part to the world? Is there something that we call, some people call it mysticism, right? Some people, the goal is transformation, right? But if we have the changes on the outside, we're looking to bring changes within ourselves. We start understanding that the world is not just about the physical development or the mental development, right? The world is a development of something higher, something that we call the spiritual world, right? And the virtues we get here is personal power, right? This is when people start exploring various meditational ideas, right? Start understanding that you can control the outside of the world also within yourself, right? Healing, right? Healing power, right? Again, I would say this would be called supernatural or spiritual development, okay? The shadow here is very interesting. The shadow here is using the supernatural abilities that you develop within yourself to maybe control others or to bring others to do what you want to do. Manipulation, okay? Manipulate using your unique inner strengths, okay? Unique inner abilities, okay? But you're not doing it, in the magician terms, it would be becoming a sorcerer, an evil sorcerer, right? You're not using your magical powers to improve the world, but rather you're so focused on, bringing what you feel would be the necessary for the world. You're not listening to what the world is telling you. The way to deal with the dragon here is transforming it, okay? Not killing the dragon, not loving it, not feeling bad for the dragon, but rather transforming it, understanding that there is a way to deal with it. The next one would be the sage, right? Somebody who is a wise person, right? After you undergo this transformation, after you learn your inner healing abilities, you become the sage. The sage is looking for the ultimate truths of the world. How does the world work? What is the most important thing in the world? Why am I here in this world? Okay, the virtue of the stage is wisdom, right? Knowledge. Also, maybe non-attachment, right? You start understanding that the world is just, there's much more than the physical world, right? The soul goes on, the soul has no limit and all that stuff. When people start understanding that there is much more than the reality that we only see with our eyes. Okay. The shadow side can be kind of judgmental, inability to come back, inability to become realistic again, right? Staying up without the need, the way to not getting involved, not helping anybody, saying, this is the way it meant to be. If God intended you to stay this way, if you got pain, maybe that was the way God intended you to do things, right? Kind of staying dogmatic, staying cold, right? And the last stage, the last archetype we all go through is called, interesting, the fool, or also called the jester, okay? This is the part when we start understanding that all our knowledge really means absolutely nothing, because there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to achieve in life. There's so much more to do. There's so much more to bring. There's so much more to transform the world around us. Then we start, once this realization comes, first you become stunned, then you become astonished, and then you just start laughing. You start understanding that the main idea, just start enjoying life, start understanding that humor, right, is the way to deal with life, right? Enjoyment, right? Start understanding that you should do what's enjoyable, right? You can bring changes to the world, but it should be something you enjoyed, something that gives you joy, happiness, right? You understand that this is the main catalyst within the way we live life. Okay. The shadow part is, become addicted to kind of something called become addicted on excitement, right? Again, like alcohol, like cocaine, you know, anything that will bring you to this side where you become extremely happy without any realistic attachment. Okay. Again, addiction, right? Alcohol, cocaine, you know, inability to see the reality, but only seeking the happiness within the reality without understanding that we always need to go through this 12 stages in order to bring transformation and achieve the true happiness, the true joy and true enjoyment. It's also interesting to start noting that before you start any project, you should always get in this part of enjoyment, okay? Happiness, joy, right? This is where I like to do the laughter, right? At the end of our Neurographica drawing, I always bring the happiness, the laughter as part of the process, because you should always finish and kind of start a new project with happiness, with joy, with seeing things, okay? And this is where the way to deal with a dragon, by the way, is to play tricks on it. Say, you know, I see you. I understand you're here. Let's do this, okay? And this would be the 12 stages. I'm going to say goodbye. I want to say thank you for joining me today. Oh, so nice to see you, Zuleika. Welcome, welcome. I am glad you joining us. I'm actually saying goodbye so we can start our second session of the basics course in Neurographica to learn how to draw Neurographica. Everybody welcome to join us. Just kind of, again, this was a very quick introduction. Highly recommend the book, Awakening the Heroes Within by Carol Pearson. Amazing. Hoping maybe within the next few months to develop an actual course where we actually draw Neurographica to develop the 12 archetypes within ourselves, okay? I want to thank you again for joining me. I want to thank you for, let me see if I can change my camera so I can say goodbye to you in person. Thank you for joining me today. I am inviting you to join me on tomorrow. We're doing the psychology of money open session. And on Thursday, we're going to continue with the pyramid of consciousness. We're going to start discovering and discussing the elements, okay? The next layer within the pyramid of consciousness where we discover and discuss elements. Wishing everybody a beautiful day ahead or an evening ahead. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of you now in a few minutes and some of you tomorrow, okay? Enjoy the rest of your day.